Good morning, everyone. Good to see you here today. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, honored to serve as your associate minister. Here at First Church, we welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you're carrying with you today and all that your heart longs to set down. We'd like to pay a special welcome to any guests who are with us this morning. If you are a guest visiting us today, we invite you to fill out a welcome card located in the pew rack in front of you. Drop it in the offering plate later in the service, and someone will reach out and get in touch with you so we can get to know you better. We invite everyone to a social hour after the service across the hall in the Leanhouse Common Room. And a couple of accessibility items. Folks can find hearing assist devices in the back of the sanctuary where you came in. There are also large print hymnals and orders of service there. There are worship activity bags for children and those young at heart, and there's a fragrance-free section in the front right pews. If you're watching online, YouTube has closed captioning available. You can enable that on the device you're using, and please let us know if you're having any trouble with the closed captioning. And we have just a few announcements this morning. There is no childcare or religious education today so that our RE staff can have a summer weekend off. Children and families are welcome in our sanctuary. If you want a little room to run around, the parlor is a place just down the hall and to the left where you can listen to the service and have a little more space. We still need a few items for the August 19th meal that we're providing at the guest house in Milwaukee. Please stop by the social justice table in the Leanhouse Common Room to sign up if you can contribute. Our transgender siblings need our love and support in resisting a hate group again this coming week. Now, the last time this happened in Milwaukee in June, the folks who showed up to show love and support, including many of you, far outnumbered the haters. So let's do it again. Yeah. You can show up with signs and support this Tuesday, August 8th, anytime between 4 and 8 p.m. at Bounce Milwaukee. And if you have questions, need more details, see our First Church Facebook group page or speak with Reverend Jennifer during coffee hour. She's back. I'm like, what? It's so good to have you back. Oh, so last and definitely not least, everyone's invited to a welcome back reception for our dear Jennifer immediately following the service today, across the room in the Leanhouse Common Room, hosted by our wonderful sabbatical team. And of course, there will be the children always know. Finally, I welcome you to our worship service by inviting us all to say the unison affirmation of our mission, which is printed in your order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. The opening words are called The Task of Religious Community by Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered in the particulars of our lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling alone, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn 389, Gathered Here, and Tristan's going to lead us through.
Good morning, everyone. So, because we haven't sung this in a while, we're going to kind of review this hymn. So I'll sing through it once by myself on the mic, and then you'll sing with me while I'm on the mic another time, and then finally, you'll keep singing it without me on the mic. So, first me. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Join with me. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw
Spirit draw near again. Spirit draw near. One more time. Spirit draw near.
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all. I'm Reverend Jennifer Nordstrom, for those of you who haven't met me yet, because I know that we've got new people here. I serve this congregation as your senior minister, and I'm so grateful to be back from sabbatical and joining you again. So we've got a responsive reading to welcome me back from sabbatical. Do you guys want to stand for this one, or would you rather just sit down? You want to stand? All right, great. Yeah, let's do it. Let's stand up. Woo! As congregation and senior minister, we have been apart for a time, but we're now returning to one another. I return to you from travels through land and spirit, seeking rest and renewal. Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. Separately, we have each learned new truths about ourselves. Truths that make us more secure in who we are and more vibrant together. Now we come together again. We begin again in love. nurturing the old that was good between us. It's been good to have had this time, and it is good to return to one another, renewed. I'm so grateful to be here, y'all. Thank you.
You might need this.
Strobe light warning. I'm glad to be back with you all. Magic will ensue.
As Maya said to me when you passed me a magic wand 5.5 months ago, can you feel the power? Oh, well, let's take a deep breath, and as we enter into a time of spoken meditation, followed by shared silence, followed by singing Spirit of Life, number 123, I just invite us all to settle ourselves where we are. You might want to adjust your position for comfort. You may want to soften your gaze and bring your attention to your breathing, whatever works to help you feel centered. The spoken meditation is called Be Still with Me and Enter by Marta I. Valentin. Be still with me and enter into the crescent fold of my arm as I gather you into this time and space. Wind your thoughts like a river toward the center of who we are. This morning as one body and out among others in the world. Be still with me and enter into this celebration of resilience and resurrection. For we are vessels eternally rising out of the water, alive. We have a purpose and strength unknown to us. Be still with me and enter quietly into this place of unbound love and gratitude.
Good morning, and welcome back. My name is Patrick Mulvey, and I'm honored to be your worship associate for the morning. I have a friend. Let's call him Max. A few lifetimes ago, he was my boss, and he became the most important mentor I've ever had. I can't tell you how much I learned about being honest and about being human from him. But this story is about something that happened much more recently. Max and I touch base every couple of weeks or months. We don't talk often, but the time in between changes nothing. One of those times, he called to tell me that he'd fallen. Well, he thought he must have fallen. He didn't remember it, but he found himself on the floor of his bedroom, not near his bed, and a table and a lamp had been knocked over. When he tried to get up, he had trouble standing because it felt like the room was slanted. By this point, you're probably thinking the same thing I already was. You know, Max, that sounds an awful lot like a stroke. Max said he wasn't sure. He didn't want to go to the clinic just to have them tell him it was nothing. Like many of us, he doesn't care for the way healthcare happens in the US. He kept saying he was going to wait and see how he felt. And no, I didn't need to come over, and no, he didn't need anything. Now, by this point in the phone call, I had already driven most of the way to his place. He wasn't sure if he needed to be seen by a doctor, but I was. I told him I'm pulling up, and he said, okay, fine, let me get dressed. It was a stroke, a transient ischemic attack. He was right about the insurance runaround. It took a couple of visits and tests and referrals, but ultimately his TIA was diagnosed and surgery was scheduled. When I took him in for the surgery, I started to try to tell him, you know, Max, if anything, doesn't go well, I couldn't get it out. And Max just said, I love you too, Patrick. And off he went. The surgery went fine. He's doing all right. No loss of speech or cognition. There are some complications, as there usually are, but on the whole, he's good. Max doesn't have much in the way of family, and the few blood relatives he does have, they're not close. I've heard people talk about chosen family and found family, and that's something I understand from the outside, but I've never thought of myself as having. I'm pretty close with most of my family, my parents, my brothers, my kiddos, so I guess I never thought of myself as a candidate for chosen family because I'm still close with my family of origin. But when I lose Max, as I surely will someday, I'll have lost a lot more than a friend. Max will leave a hole in my life that I won't ever be able to fill. There are no other pieces shaped like Max. And I hope I'm there when he goes, because I don't want him to go alone. And if that's not chosen family, I guess I don't know what is.
In the novel Cutting for Stone by Abraham Verghese, we meet people who come from far and wide to work at a mission hospital in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The community in and around the hospital includes Ethiopians and Eritreans, Indians and British, Somalis and Sudanese. Born from a secret union between an Indian nun, Sister Mary Joseph Praise, and a British surgeon, Thomas Stone, we meet the main characters of the story, twin brothers named Shiva and Marion Stone, who come into the world through a traumatic delivery. Orphaned by the death of their mother on the delivery table. This is not a spoiler, the reader knows it by page 3, or by reading the back cover. Orphaned by the death of their mother and abandoned by their father, who cannot handle the death of his true love, and the absolute surprise of becoming a father, pregnancy concealed, nun's garments, etc. The twins survive through the skill and care of the surgeon's colleagues. Who then are these children's kin? What is kinship? The definition in the dictionary says kinship is connection by blood, marriage, or adoption, family relationship. So when Hema and Ghosh, the surgeon's colleagues, adopt the twins, they become kin. Yet, the second dictionary definition also applies. Kinship is relationship by nature or character, affinity. The deep web of connection between people working, or rather serving at that mission hospital, made them kin long before the twins were born. The traditional notion of kinship, the first definition, family connected by blood, marriage, or adoption, can be beautiful. But it can also be exploited, used as a weapon to bludgeon those who don't fit in. When we limit the definition of kinship to connections created by marriage, birthing, or adopting children, it boxes us in with people who may or may not share a mutual love and respect. And it excludes other profound connections of affinity. What happens when we open the box, remove the walls, and include kin who are beyond our family of origin? What might happen if we develop a theology of being kindred to one another? Barbara Brown Taylor writes in her book, An Altar in the World, even the monks who lived all alone came together from time to time to celebrate communion and share a common meal afterward, over which they discussed any problems in the community. Even if they lived 32 miles apart, they remained in community. They needed one another, and they knew it. This was not simply a matter of physical need, although that was certainly a factor for the ancient desert fathers, a group of early Christians living in the wilderness. The deeper reason they needed one another was to save them from the temptation of believing in their own self-sufficiency. She tells a story. One elder who lived all alone undertook a 70-week fast, eating only once a week during that whole time, in order to become more receptive to God. when he was little more than bone and vapor, he asked God to reveal to him the meaning of a certain Bible passage. But God would not do it. The elder, disappointed by how little his fast had done for him, decided to go ask one of his brothers what the passage meant. The minute he left his cell, an angel of God appeared to him, saying, "Your 70-week fast did not bring you one step closer to God. But now that you have humbled yourself enough to go to your brother, God sent me to tell you the meaning." Then the angel told the elder what the passage meant and went away. Taylor comments, "I like to think that the elder went on to visit his brother anyway, breaking his fast with him and swapping stories about what a trickster God was." At the very least, most of us need someone to tell our stories to. At a deeper level, most of us need someone to help us forget ourselves, a little or a lot. Where do we find kinship? If we are seeking kinship outside of the box, where do we go? Karen Herring points to this time we're living in, this time of tremendous change in the world, as a threshold time, when we are between what was and what might come to be. During threshold times, we especially need to claim companions. She asks, what are the places that teach you how to find companions and to be one? Personally, I feel lucky that my parents modeled this for me. They were of the generation when voluntary organizations thrived. They were good at finding and being companions in so many places. In our immediate neighborhood, in the public schools, at church, in sewing club and golfing group, volunteering with AFS and United Way. Growing up, I took it for granted that finding companions through involvement in groups was the way to do it. I claimed companions in Girl Scouts, in band, in speech club, high school and community theater, and our embarrassingly bad gymnastics team. Oof. Later, I found companions in a dance group by volunteering at a food co-op, training in a karate dojo, yes, even me, planning and executing protests with a feminist group, and of course, by going to church. Herring writes, sociologists sometimes talk about third place or third space, as neither our home nor our workplace are first and second place, respectively, but as additional places that offer a sense of belonging shared with others. The park down the street, the coffee shop on the corner, the art museum, the riverfront. Herring says, I like to think of these as schools of the heart that Canadian theologian Jean Valliere named as increasingly important in times of confusion and brokenness. Valliere said, schools of the heart are intermediaries between people and society that teach us to love intelligently and help us grow to greater wholeness. They are places where we experience belonging deep enough to learn how to share it with others. Where are your schools of the heart? I still have touchstones of long-time friendships, people who are not blood relations, yet treat me as family, people who gathered me in when I needed it most, friends who pull me into that crescent fold of their arm. people to whom I express my gratitude by being their companion. How do we create kinship beyond blood or marriage? By taking time to tell and receive each other's stories. Last week, I talked to you about going the speed of the body as a way to experience more grace in the world. I also talked about going the speed of church, which is an amusing way to describe just how much longer things take when we are practicing together as a community. It is a truth. Barbara Brown Taylor wrote, "The wisdom of the ancient monastics includes the wisdom that the hardest spiritual work in the world is to love the neighbor as yourself, to encounter another human being not as someone you can use, fix, control, change, help, save, enroll, or convince, but simply as someone who can spring you from the prison of yourself. If you will allow it, all you have to do is recognize another you out there whom you may care for as instinctively as you care for yourself. The world's great religions," she continues, "have always required communities of people to make them work. Whether they call themselves congregations, covens, ummas, sanghas, or churches, these communities are the concrete places where the teachings of the religion are tested. Sometimes the teachings explode in people's faces. Other times, they save people's lives. Either way, the teachings mean little apart from the embodied practices of the community." Biblical scholar Marcus Borg wrote, "One of Jesus's most characteristic activities was an open and inclusive table. Table fellowship, sharing a meal with somebody, had a significance in Jesus's social world that is difficult for us to imagine. It was not a casual act, as it can be in the modern world. Sharing a meal represented mutual acceptance. Refusing to share a meal was a form of social ostracism. Pharisees would not eat with somebody considered impure, and no one would share a meal with an outcast. The meal was a microcosm of the social system, table fellowship, an embodiment of social vision. Jesus frequently ate with outcasts, tax collectors, and sinners, and they were festive meals. The early Jesus movement included women, untouchables, the poor, the disabled, and the marginalized. It is difficult for us who live in a world in which we take for granted an attitude of non-discrimination to appreciate the radical character of this inclusiveness. Taylor talks about Jesus' table fellowship as his practice of encountering and welcoming the stranger. She said, "Wherever people who felt like strangers happened to meet Jesus, he was the person who made them feel like kin." Well, this radical kinship is easier said than done, and yet it is a vision that motivates and inspires, and sometimes becomes real. In the 1980s, Father Greg Boyle witnessed gang violence in his community while serving as the pastor of the Dolores Mission in Los Angeles. In 1992, Father Boyle founded Homeboys Industries, the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and re-entry program in the world. Homeboy employs former gang members and people who were previously incarcerated. Radical kinship is the only thing that mattered to Jesus Father Boyle said during a talk at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. We are all invited into this exquisite mutuality where there is no us and them. Once we know that we are unshakably good, Boyle said, and that we belong to each other, we can roll up our sleeves and create anew this place of love and belonging that God would recognize. For Jesus, he said, it wasn't about taking the right stand on issues. It was about standing in the right place. The place to stand is with the marginalized, he said. And you don't go to the margins to make a difference. You go to the margins because you want those voices to be heard. None of us is Father Greg. And we Unitarian Universalists can sometimes do harm by rushing out to save people in marginalized communities. Radical kinship takes time. It is built through relationships. Through relationships, it is built when we go at the speed of trust, as my dear colleague often reminds me. We must go at the speed of trust. Father Greg has been doing his ministry for decades, despite inherent separations in society. One of the separations, both ancient and current, is migration. People migrate for many reasons, as we know, to seek economic opportunities, to flee climate change disasters, and to reunite with family, among the reasons. People migrate to escape violence and persecution. There are individuals and families who migrate because their identity is under attack. We saw this in the United States with the Great Migration of African American people leaving the Jim Crow South, seeking safer communities up north where they could live and breathe. We are seeing it now as transgender families and individuals. They're leaving states like Florida, leaving their homes and jobs, families, communities, moving up north, seeking safer communities in which to live and breathe. Will we offer them kinship and a place at the welcome table? A colleague and friend of mine who serves a UU congregation in the Chicago area told me this summer they have already welcomed 2 trans families into their congregation who were fleeing hostile conditions in Florida. It's happening. This story is not new. It is ancient. The human story of hatred based on identity, of religion, tribe, ethnicity, skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity. But we know, because we live it, there is another ancient story of kinship across differences. Who is our kin, really? Shiva and Marion Stone both grow up to become surgeons, like their biological father and their adoptive parents. A series of events during the Ethiopian Revolution of the late 1970s causes Marion to migrate to America, where he continues his medical training as an intern at a hospital named Our Lady of Perpetual Succor. Our Lady of Perpetual Succor in a poor neighborhood in the Bronx, New York City. In this setting, again, we meet people from many places: India, Trinidad, Pakistan, Italy, Mexico, Puerto Rico. After 6 years, Marion travels to Boston to take his board exams. He celebrates afterwards. He did well, of course. He celebrates afterward by taking a taxi to Roxbury, where he heard there was an Ethiopian cafe run by someone known as the Queen of Sheba. The cafe is in a split-level house with yellow shingles at the end of a vacant block. As Marion and his Ethiopian taxi driver enter the house, Marion remembers the smell of fermenting honey elicited a Pavlovian response from my taste buds. We found a half-dozen men eating at picnic tables and benches with room for a dozen more. The wooden floor was strewn with freshly cut grass, just as it would have been if this were a home or a restaurant in Addis Ababa. We washed our hands and took our seats, and at once water and 2 small golden flasks of yellow tej were put in front of us. A woman brought a tray of injera on which were generous servings of lamb, lentils, and chicken. This was the real thing. Soon a lovely Ethiopian lady came cautiously down the stairs, careful not to snag her high heels. The queen, for there was no doubt this was she, bowed in our direction while continuing to an office near the kitchen. Then she stopped abruptly. She turned as if she had seen a vision and stared. I was in my suit, my tie loosened. Did I look that out of place? Within the confines of Our Lady of Perpetual Succor, all the tribes of Abraham were represented, and I felt no more foreign than my patients or the staff. Now, as I attracted her attention, and that of the others there, I felt like a Pharisee again. "Praise God," the queen said, her hands on her cheeks. She shifted her tinted glasses to her forehead, revealing eyes wide open in astonishment. Her expression, at first quizzical, now turned joyous, showing brilliant white and perfect teeth. "Child, do you not know me?" she said, moving closer, her rose-scented attar preceding her. "Child, do you not know me?" I came to my feet, still puzzled. "I pray for you every day," she said in Amharic. "Don't tell me that I've changed that much." Well, I towered over her. I was tongue-tied. She had been a mother and I a boy when I first met her. "Sige?" I said at last. She lunged toward me, kissed my cheeks, held me at arm's length to better examine me, then pulled me to her to bump cheeks again and again and again. "My God, Blessed Mary and all the saints," she said, "how are you? Is it you?" After 6 years in America, it was only at that moment, standing in that yellow house, in her arms, cut grass under my feet, that I felt at ease in this land, felt my guard come down and the muscles in my belly and neck relax. Here was someone from my past, from my very street, someone whom I liked and whom I had always felt a bond. I kissed her cheeks as vigorously as she kissed mine. Who would stop first? Not I. The waitress peered in from the kitchen. Our fellow diners stopped to watch. They were displaced people, just like us, and they understood all too well these kinds of reunions, these moments when a piece of your old house comes floating by in the river. Friends, we can be this place of table fellowship where strangers find home in each other, where all are welcome. Floods, fires, identity politics brought to the level of persecution are causing grievous separations and migrations. Let us offer the welcome table that so many are seeking. Let us be kindred to one another. May it be so.
I think I'll get through this part okay. Every week, we have an opportunity to practice our values through sharing our resources. Our pledges are at the core of our spiritual practice of generosity. In addition, the church shares half of all the non-pledged cash in our offering plate with a community organization. In this way, we commit our resources in line with our belief that this congregation is interdependent with the world beyond these walls. Today, we share the plate with Wisconsin Unitarian Universalist State Action Network. May the practice of giving bring us joy. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Thank you, Tristan. Our closing words are called "The Body is Humankind," my Norman cousins. I am a single cell in a body of 8 billion cells. The body is humankind. I am a single cell. My needs are individual, but they are not unique. I am interlocked with other human beings in the consequences of our actions, thoughts, and feelings. I will work for human unity and peace, for a moral order in harmony with the order of the universe. Together we share the quest for a society of the whole equal to our needs, a society in which we need not live below our moral capacity, and in which justice has a life of its own. We are single cells in a body of 8 billion cells. The body is humankind. Will you please rise in body or spirit for our recessional hymn 407? We're going to sit at the welcome table.